I have got a plan for the non-conference in college football that will make everything better. I just got to make sure that this gets enacted. Let's just start with this fact. The non-conference, while we've had some good games, listen, Texas, Alabama was terrific. App State, what they've done, terrific. We've had some close games even, and some upsets here and there. We've had 20-point favorites, 3 of them on one day, all lose. And that's all well and good. But the bottom line is, in the non-conference so far, the average margin is 25 points. That's 4 scores. This ain't the Gettysburg Address. 4 scores ain't going to cut it, folks. We got to get better at scheduling in college football. There was only 7 ranked matchups, and there's been only 15 teams so far in college football not play an FCS team. Come on. We can do better than this. We can do better than this. And by the way, I think we're leaving a lot of revenue on the table. A lot of revenue. There is a massive imbalance in scheduling. We leave it up to these ADs, more in that in a moment, but a massive imbalance. Did you know that Vanderbilt, who's trying to get out of the pit of despair, as I defined it earlier, has 6 true road games this year, while Michigan and Ohio State, who are true blue bloods and sitting in the top 4 in the country, have to go on the road 4 times. That shouldn't be a thing. The Cowboys don't get to sit at AT&T Stadium more often than Green Bay has to travel away from Lambeau Field, or Jacksonville. We don't force those teams to leave their stadium more often than others outside of true neutral sites like the games in London. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, and we've got to fix it. We've got to fix non-conference scheduling. So how do we do that? Well, you've got to know how non-conference schedules are made. Right now, they're just made by athletic directors. If you don't know this, they literally call each other, or at things like the National Football Foundation Hall of Fame, they get together and they're having cocktails and they're like, hey, we should play in 2032. We've got an open date. And then this guy is like smoking a cigar and he's like, no, that sounds great. We should do that. And then they shake hands and then they send out a tweet the next week. And it's like, oh, look at us beating on their chest. We're going to play Georgia in 2057. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And nobody in the modern world needs to plan out in a decade in advance their travel plans for road games in college football. It's totally archaic and it needs to change. And those athletic directors, which by the way, is de facto the head coach, their only objective is to make a schedule advantageous to them. Not for all of college football, and not even for the overarching fan necessarily. To them, more advantageous for them. One of the biggest issues in college football is that everybody is acting in their own best interest, and we don't have somebody or something acting in the best interest of the entire sport. What is that umbrella? Folks, by the way, I say folks a lot. We should make a drinking game out of it on this podcast. Every time I say folks, you could be water. Like, I don't suggest, if you're listening to this in your car, like, don't take a shot. Maybe that's unsafe. But anyways, I say folks a lot so we can make something out. This is not working and we need to fix it. The first way to fix it is that we have to create an overarching governing body over the sport. When I talk with coaches all over the country, whether it's James Franklin or Nick Saban or any of these guys in the meetings, generally after we talk about the team and the matchup that week, I will throw out to them an overarching question about the sport generally. And I'll say, if you could fix one thing in college football, what would it be? Do you know what answer I get? Almost every time, I'm talking like 98% of the time, they say, we need a commissioner. Now, what they're saying is, I don't think they're saying we need an individual. They're saying we need a body, a board, a commissioner, a commissioner's office that sits over the sport and looks after the entire sport and doesn't have just their own best interest at heart. The coaches know it, so we need to do that. I actually think that there is a perfect governing body sitting there ready to go. Why is it perfect? Because it has the power of the purse and the power of the rings. This is not Lord of the Rings, folks. I'm talking about the CFP, the College Football Playoff. They already have a board of governors. They already distribute large sums of revenue, and they have the power to crown the champion in the sport. So they have leverage. We need to give them more. They need to be the overarching governing body in college football. Now, they could take a look at and start to fix any number of issues, and there are many. NIL transfer, potentially negotiating with an association to give revenue share to players. There's a lot going on in college football, a lot. But one of those is scheduling. Now, what would I do? What's the plan? What's the objective in scheduling? Well, that overarching governing body, let's call it the CFP, they would be in charge of then every non-conference game in college football, regular season or postseason. So not only are they in charge of, let's say, the expanded playoff, they would also be in charge of every non-league game in college football. You would grow their inventory, and they would have 3 objectives with all of that inventory, only 3. Increase competitive intensity and inventory, increase parity, and increase revenue. And I've got the plan. All you got to do is call me, guys. I can sit down there. I can do it on the whiteboard. I can write this up for you. Here is the plan. And it's going to achieve all 3 of those objectives. First and foremost, every single school in the country would play 9 conference games. I don't care if you're in the Sun Belt or the SEC or the ACC, you're going to play 9 conference games. That leaves 3 non-league games for every school in the country. And this is how they would be divvied up. Big conferences, the power conferences, would get 2 home games every school and 1 road game. The smaller conferences, that would be flipped. 2 on the road, 1 at home. And then this is the beauty of it. And this is how we're going to increase competitiveness and parity all at the same time. Based on where you finished the previous season in your conference, you will be put into a pool. There's going to be 4 pools. Everybody in the country goes into a pool. You're either in pool 1, pool 2, pool 3, or pool 4. And then we're going to have a blind draw of who you're playing, and it's going to be opponents within your pool. I believe that the best programs in the country should be expected to play the toughest schedules in the country. We should expect that. By the way, they should not balk at that, because we've got an expanded playoff coming. We've got 6 at-large spots. So great programs can afford to lose a game and still make it to the postseason. Their main objective will still be intact, even if they're playing a tougher schedule. The way that this would go is that if you are a first-place finisher, second-place finisher, third-place finisher, there would be about 15 schools in the country that would be placed into Pool 1 from the big conferences. And on a blind draw, I would select you 2 games from that pool outside of your league. You're going to play one of those games on the road and one of them at home. Then I would go to pool number 1 in the small conferences. I would take one of those teams out, and you're going to host that team at your stadium. So now you're playing a more difficult schedule than the teams that finished last in your conference, which you can afford because the playoff is expanding and there's still 6 at-large spots out there. There were only 7 ranked matchups in the non-conference so far this year. Only 7. As I was building this out, if you just quickly go through the math, between Pool 1 and Pool 2, most of those teams are ranked. And you start making these matchups home and on the road, you're going to have, at a minimum, based on the year and the week, 25, 30, maybe even upwards of 35 ranked matchups just in the non-conference. Did you hear what I said? This year, there were 7 so far. 7. I could give you 25 on the low end. That's good for the sport. The games will be more competitive because like teams will be playing like teams. If you're at the bottom of the conference, it gives you a better opportunity to win football games, gain success, and move yourself up. Just for an example, folks, Michigan this year, if it was my model, if I was on the CFP board and I was making schedules for you, they wouldn't play Hawaii and UConn and Colorado State. No. They would host Oregon, host Central Michigan, and go to Clemson. Alabama, you wouldn't get your 4 non-conference games and get a feather in your cap just for going to Austin while you play Austin P in November. No. You're going to host Utah, host App State, and go to the Shoe and face the Buckeyes in Columbus. That is how you grow the sport. More interest, more revenue distribution, and ultimately just better for the fans. We want to see better games. I can give you better games. I want to see more competitiveness. I can give you more competitiveness. We need more parity in the sport. I can give you more parity in the sport. Because the way that it is right now, 7 ranked matchups so far in the non-conference, that ain't cutting it.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.